So it's good to see you here today. My name is Scott McCormick. This is 10 Essentials for Successful Mobile Learning Implementation. I love that this is course 101 in the actual scheme of all of the concurrent sessions, because in many ways this is Mobile Learning 101. So in the next hour we're just going to do a crash course of all the things, well, most of the things, obviously the essential things that you need to consider as you begin to undertake and implement mobile learning within your organization. This is good for a corporation, or if you're from the academic background, big enterprise, you name it. There's just going to be some key things that we'll talk about that you can implement. Just a couple things. You will be asked to do an evaluation of today's session. Those are right outside the door. Please do those. Please take a minute and do those. That really helps the eLearning Guild. And it helps me as a speaker, because I can focus on the things that, if I see a recurrent thing of something, like Scott's jokes are bad, then I'll tell less jokes. So whatever you're getting out of it or not getting out of it, please put it on there, because it's very helpful. I'm going to tell you to not be shy to stop me and ask a question, because I do want to get your interaction. A big part of mobile is collaboration, and that's what we're doing here today. We can all learn from each other, and that happens in mobile. So instead of me giving you a bunch of chart slides that show you what you already know, one of the greatest, really helpful study is this one. So here's your first note. Mary Meeker's 2013 Internet Trends Report. If you just Google that, you'll find many instances of blogs and so forth referencing that, and it's just a whole host, 1,000+ slide deck of all those kinds of things that you like to read about. Like there's as many mobile subscriptions as there are people in the world, and stuff that should floor you, but it really doesn't anymore. It really doesn't anymore, and that should be a sign right there. And there's some things in there that are a little sketchy, like you might hear one figure that we look at our mobile devices 150 times a day, and that's in that report. But if you dig deep enough, there's some real confusion on where the source of that statistic comes from. But it might be fairly accurate if you think about it. But I haven't done the total math on it, because you figure we're asleep some of the time, and then what does that mean? But this has become the posture of the world anymore, looking at our mobile device and keeping up on things. Here's what I want to know. So this is yes or no. So we'll first do the yes, and you're going to have to be not shy, okay? It's okay to say no to this question. Have you ever used a mobile device to check up or learn more about a service or, well, just a service or a business? Yes. Yes, I have. Wow, most everybody. And no, I haven't. Okay, that's cool. Because the reason I asked that particular question, that was asked to a wide range of adults. The question wasn't asked, do you own a smartphone or do you have a mobile device or whatever, just adults. And 42% said yes. So what does that mean to me as a training professional? That means the people that I am imparting knowledge to in my organization, a good percentage of them are using that device to solve problems. All right? It's not just to check on the Blackhawks score, which was not good last night. It's not just a check on email, but they're using it to solve problems, and that should tell us something about how these devices are changing things dramatically, and even in our world. So yes, there's tons of apps out there. There's tons of ways to access communication or learning knowledge. And so is that a blessing or a curse to us as learning professionals as we deliver training? Well, how could it be a blessing? How is it a good thing? You have a knowledgeable audience, okay? Any other thoughts? How can that be a good thing that our learners, even if we haven't delivered training on a mobile device within our context of our organization, how else can it be good? Yeah?
Yeah, we can get stuff to our learners quickly when they need it.
Quickly when they need it? Yeah?
Return learners more active.
I'm sorry?
More active. The learners are more active because they use the smartphone and the tablets.
Okay. Yeah, they have more of a aptitude to use it. One more.
I think they're interested. They'll actually use it. They'll go to.
They'll have an interest in it, yeah. It's a platform that they're accustomed to. Now, how could it be a curse?
Spending too much time looking at it.
Yeah, they could be. Their expectations are going up all the time, as long as you're figuring out how to implement mobile. Their expectations go up all the time, and their usage habits of how they do things is going up all the time. So the longer you wait, the bigger battle that you have to try to fit into the context of their learning experience, their learning patterns, the way they do things. That wasn't the case when e-learning hit the scene, because we were delivering e-learning on computers in the business world or wherever, that nobody had these PCs at home, or very few people did. Why? They were freaking expensive. So we learned about this new technology, PCs, at work, and when it became affordable, then we did it at home. So we as professionals sort of controlled the context and the environment. Mobile, it's flip-flop. It's growing outside of where we are, and they're bringing it into the workplace, into the organization. And so we have to work within that context. So you're going to hear this phrase. So here's our first essential. We have this new substantive way to learn with mobile. And what I'm going to ask you guys to do as you go through the next 2 days of this conference is to reimagine, rethink of how we can train the people that are put into our care of sharing knowledge. All right? Think expansively. Open up to how can we do this most effectively and use the affordances of mobile to our advantage. These devices are incredible, all that they can do. And there's so many things here that we never could do on a PC. So if it's within our abilities to use those affordances, why wouldn't we? Something like geolocation. What if there was a way that we could take advantage of geolocation, the device knowing where the person is, as part of our application? So if I'm a sales rep and I drive to, I don't know, grocery stores. What if I was a regional manager and as I'm driving towards the grocery store in western Minneapolis, St. Paul, that my device knew where I was going and it could immediately call up my last review with that person, their history of training, how they're doing on their SMART goals. What if it was immediately there when I drove up, just because the device knew what to look for? How cool is that? It saves me the time of having to look all that stuff up, right? So let's reimagine together, okay? Now you're going to see this term a lot, be used a lot. Maybe you've already heard it. Mobile learning is just in time, just enough, just for me. Memorize it, all right? Yeah, it's bandied a lot about, used a lot, and because it's very appropriate. It's spot on. Just in time, just enough, just for me. So it's already been mentioned. Mobile learning, used at the time of need. Excellent. Just like we use it in our everyday life. It's just enough. So it's not a huge expanse of knowledge that I have to sift through to find exactly what I need, but it's what I need, and it's winnowed down to be more applicable to the context of the situation of my learning. And then it's just for me. So mobile applications or mobile technologies have ways of knowing your usage patterns, your history, the experience of what you're doing. So you see examples of it all the time. If you buy something off of Amazon, for instance, all of a sudden there's little suggestions of what else you could buy. Why is that? Because you bought something else, and then they know people that buy this tend to buy these 4 things, and so why not put them right in front of you? Why not send an email that says you might be interested in these other things? Does that make sense? Just in time, just enough, just for me. So remember that as you're going from course to course or session to session this time, and you kind of evaluate the what's being presented as mobile learning within these guidelines. Is it falling within these places, or is it e-learning on a tablet? Is it an e-learning module that we've delivered for the last 3 years through our LMS, and I launch it, and I hit next, and I hit next, and I hit next, and I hit next, and it's a 30-minute e-learning module. You might hear debates on, is mobile learning really learning? We've had that discussion before. And we're not going to have that one here. But yes, I do think it is, very much so. Right. The fact that you're here is that you're already getting mobile smart. Now, in 2010, when mLearnCon started, and Float was here from the start, there was very few places to get mobile learning information. In fact, there was probably half as many people that registered for the conference itself. Now it's growing, it's burgeoning, it's super exciting to see all that's happening within mLearning. So you have all of these places to find mobile learning information. And what do I mean by apps in real life? So you do use apps in your everyday life. So what I would recommend is always evaluate an app that you like for whatever usage it is. You take it with you on your running. You use it to do lists for grocery shopping. Anything like that, but start, again, point number 1, reimagine. How could I use the design model here within my own context? A grocery list. It's just a grocery list. But is there some kind of checklist that's applicable to one of the job titles within your training? What if you could deliver that checklist to anybody at any time, and they could check it right before they do that particular task? What if it's a safety checklist? Right? We have clients that have big machines that do stuff. And before they operate those machines every day, what do they have to do? A safety checklist. Well, what if that list could be popped up on a mobile device every time and they go through it? What if, in fact, it's linked to the site manager and I go through the checklist? Maybe it even has photos or videos that pop up of things that I'm supposed to look for. That's a nice touch. Maybe it can read a QR code on the side of the machine that tells me exactly the history of this machine, when it was last repaired, some kind of repair history. And then when I'm done, I could hit a button that says submit, and then the site manager knows that Scott has completed the safety checklist, and I know that he can start operating. That's more than opening a 3-ring binder, right? Or taking a 30-minute course on safety inspections a week earlier. That's a lot different, and I hope we see it as a lot different. So all of these things. And I find great stuff in 2 areas. LinkedIn groups. So there's now a lot of mobile learning groups. So link in to me, Scott McCormick, Float Mobile Learning. Become my LinkedIn connections. And then look at the groups that I'm in. There's some that might be good to you. And I want to be your connection. Social media is a big part of mobile. Then Twitter. Follow people that are in this field, and they're always tweeting, I saw this cool blog post, I saw this cool article, here's Mary Meeker's chart, all those things. Make those connections and learn that way as well. I find some of my best stuff just through those avenues. All right. Second one is, and this would be true of any endeavor, but it's especially true of mobile, I think, that you need a business case and you need a process. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on these, but a business case to me is answering the question, what does success look like? What are we trying to achieve as a group with this endeavor? Simply put, the answer may not be mobile learning. I'm willing to say that. You may have this business case, you talk it over with your team, and you realize, mobile isn't the answer to this. They don't have the connectivity that they need for us to push the content to. They don't have the devices we need for them. Whatever the case may be, mobile may not be the answer. A business case has to happen. So, how do we find some of those things? You can identify learning gaps, do a needs analysis. Have you guys done that in other courses, right? Whether it's e-learning, instructor-led, you do a needs analysis, or that it bubbles up where you have gaps. Talk to your target audience, one of your most important stakeholder, because remember, they have a strong interest in mobile already, and they'll tell you what their needs are. Now let's say it's people that don't respond to polls, or you always get very low usage in when you send out a poll, for instance. There's other ways you can find out where the learning gaps are from your audience. It's being found out through research that a lot of workers are using social media to solve problems. In fact, there's one poll, and you can ask me for a link to it if you just contact me afterwards, where it shows workers that use Twitter have an increase in productivity. Because why? They're reaching out to their peers to find answers to questions. Now, that shouldn't be terribly surprising, but what if you had that information of common questions that are being shared between peers of how do you solve something? What does that tell you as a learning professional? What does that say to you?
Shows you what the need is.
Right. They're identifying the learning gaps. How great is that? So social media can be one of those doors that open that show you where problems are existing in your training, because they're not finding it out from you. Building a content strategy. So you have lots of content to draw from. What do we use? What do we don't use? What's our priorities? That sort of thing. There's a lot of, in those areas I said to research from, there's a lot of talk about content strategy, and it's good stuff. Talk about the creation, publication, and governance, and so that means building it, delivering it, and then administering it. Build in metrics. There is a case that mobile can be the most measured training that you could ever deliver. We're so very much used to using metrics on our websites, for instance. You can get incredibly detailed in metrics in mobile. So we have apps where we know the success rate on every question that's within the app. And so why is that good? Well, if question number 4 is consistently missed by a majority of our learners, we have a problem in our training because they're not understanding it. So metrics can be tremendous. And then ROI can be the greatest business case you could almost ever build, because what kind of stakeholders want to hear about ROI? What? Exactly, yeah. And who is that typically?
Exactly.
Executive management, you know? Besides the ones that just, come to your department one day and say, we need to build an app, and then have no reason for that. The ones that say, okay, you guys, you have this idea, you have a business case about delivering mobile. Give it to me in dollars and cents. So what are ways that could happen? Well, let's go back to safety, okay? Most big organizations have a number of how much an injury costs to the enterprise or the organization, right? That's typically a very big number, really, if you think of all the variables that happen with an injury. And so it's time lost, the healthcare costs, the person that has to fill in for the person that got injured, getting them up to speed, whatever the case might be, there is a number. So if you have a safety app that your projection is it can save 4 injuries, our projection is it would save 4 injuries per year, and let's say it's already been calculated by you, executive management, that every injury costs our company $250,000. This app that costs, I don't know, $50K is projected to save us $1 million. I like the sound of that. I like the sound of that a lot. Now, I know there's arguments like there's no way to prove that the app saved 4 injuries or whatever that, but when we project ROI, it's always projection. We're always doing crystal ball. So, in fact, BlackBerry, in their UI guidelines, they have some great questions. So for building a business case, and it's questions like these. What kind of problem does your application solve? What goals do your users want to accomplish? And just take a look at those, and you get a feel for the kind of questions you're going to want to ask. So has anybody sat down with their team before and said, I've got this idea to try mobile. What do you guys think? Have you ever been there before? Had that discussion? Yeah? No? Okay. Cool. And how'd that go? I mean, what did you feel like you're bumping into a brick wall? Did you feel like you were getting somewhere? Somebody want to share their experience?
Brick wall.
Good?
Brick wall.
Brick wall? Can you remember why you kind of bonked?
They just don't have any kind of direction. What are the goals?
Okay.
Why they want to implement mobile? Just don't have any clue of it.
Okay. So you kind of needed to step back and redefine your business case, some of the requirements, that sort of thing, which talks about the process involved. Now, we're very used to ADDIE, right? Oh, that's a business case. That's one I want to talk to. Hold that thought about ADDIE, okay? Because I wanted to share this business case. I just learned about this one the other day. So Eaton, that does electronics type of parts, have over 200,000 parts that a salesperson needs to know about. And so how, up until recently, did they have that part information available to them? 3 ring binders. Wouldn't that be fun? As you're working with a distributor or a dealer, to try to figure out what parts that they need, how to restock, that sort of thing. No, it would not be fun is the answer, just for any of you. So Eaton worked very hard to replace that with a tablet app that is dual purpose. It can be used by a salesperson in a customer-facing situation, and it could even be used by a customer with an unproctored situation if they were just looking at products and wanted to see things. So 3 ring binders out the window, everything on a tablet instead. So what are some advantages of that? What are some good outcomes of that are immediately?
Real-time information.
What?
Real-time information.
They can update it virtually whenever they want. And if there's 200,000 products, that means it changes every day.
Searches.
It's searchable.
It's cheap.
So
Lighter.
It's lighter.
It's cheaper. You don't have to print all this.
Printing.
And then mail it out to the various folks. Cheaper to buy them with.
Absolutely. In fact, the rep used to get updates, you know, in print, and then he had to find the right page in the binder to replace it, right? All those things that might be in your organization.
Labor time.
What?
Just labor time.
Yeah, just time doing that. See how all of these have even a monetary attachment to them, saving time, saving printing costs. That's an obvious one. If that,
The negatives you think.
okay, that was my next question. What would some of the negatives be?
If the tech doesn't work.
Tech doesn't work. Maybe they're in places that don't have good internet access, and so all of a sudden they're not with the latest information. Although that was probably happening, but still the case. What else?
The battery dies on them while they're working.
Heck yeah. Or it's not.
You got a learning curve for the guy that's been
There's
using
a-
the 3-ring binder for 30 years.
Exactly. And he's actually really good at updating his binder. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, if you open the door to accessibility to the customer might need a support structure.
Say that again.
If you open the door to make it accessible to the customers might then need a support structure like somebody to call or a help desk.
Ooh, she's got a good one. When you do something technological like this, who's supporting it? I mean, nobody ever called in to say, I can't figure out how to replace this page in my binder. But they are going to call in and say, I'm trying to load the PowerSource app, and it keeps, it's line, the little bar goes across like 5/8 of the way, and then it just hangs up. What do I do? So that means who gets involved? IT, right? And they love new stuff. They love a bunch of new devices out there. No, I love IT, actually, for all these new. What?
The initial expense of the device.
The initial expense of the device. One more.
Product security.
Security, good. And one last over there.
Compounding the problem is somebody who works in IT is that the device manufacturers such as Apple make them hard to support remotely.
Okay, good. Along the lines of support. See what we're doing here? We're doing what a team, your team would be doing, is having these discussions. What would work? What would be good about this? What would be bad? We're doing it right now, and you need to have those same discussions. So, well, but what Eaton found was a lot of good stuff. Their sales cycle was shortened dramatically. And so, believe me, they had a dollar figure attached to the sales cycle. And because they had this immediate updates, what does that mean? More sales per week, per salesperson. Yay! Those are good things. I mean, you run around the office with a banner with that kind of stuff. More sales per week per salesperson? I'm liking it. And then a process. We're not throwing away processes. So here's another debate you're going to hear this next 2 days. ADDIE versus Agile. And it's not really a versus, okay? It's a ADDIE, perhaps, if that's what you're already using, and Agile. Just Agile is more iterative. There's more collaboration along the way, more iterations that might come out. Your stakeholders might be weighing in on each of those iterations early on. So I liken it to ADDIE's kind of like a relay race. So you're on a track team, and then the project manager starts out with the course, hands the baton to the instructional designer. Instructional designers run in. They hand it off to the user interface designer, and then the baton's handed running, and you hand it off to the developer. Each one of those milestones hit. Before we go any further, we're going to hit that milestone. Agile is more like a basketball team, or let's talk hockey again, because it's more fresh in my mind. Working as a team and passing back and forth together to reach that common goal. Right? In hockey, you don't have one guy standing back at one side of the rink and pass it up and just stand there and wait to another guy and then to another guy and then to another guy and hope the guy at the end shoots the goal in the puck in the goal, right? They all go down there at once and hopefully score, unlike last night. You're going to hear a lot of acronyms. I started with an easy one. What's this mean? Bring your own device. Patterned after one of our favorite acronyms. BYOB. So why is this important? In all of learning America, I don't want to say corporate America, because it happens in education as well, there's a battle of, do we provide devices for our learners? Do we let them use the devices that they already own? Do we provide them, or do we work with the devices that they already own? The reason this is a huge discussion is there are pluses and minuses on each side of the arguments, and all of them valid. Initially, when BYOD was talked about, all anybody could talk about was the savings, because we don't have to buy all those devices for our people. But what did companies start finding out?
Multiple platforms.
Multiple platforms. The savings weren't as wonderful as thought. Because just ask that. You think you had trouble going to IT about one device? What if you go and say, we need to be able to go to iOS, Android, and BlackBerry, and Windows Mobile? IT is going to say, sorry, unless you want me to hire a staff of like 6 more people. On the Android alone, out there, there's 4 versions of the operating system, and they're out there, and they're going to be used. Is somebody going to be trying to call up our training on a Kindle? Do I have to have somebody that can support that? So you see how the cost is starting to rise? The beauty of the one device is control by IT, by you, by your developer. I only have to develop one app. Or if I'm developing in HTML5 and it's a browser-based app, I got to hit all of those. And maybe it needs to be responsive web design. Do we have anybody that even knows how to do that in our department? We're lucky to get an articulate module out the door. And you want me to do responsive web design? So you can see that that argument has valid parts on both sides. Less is more. So let me tell you what I mean by this. Okay, I'm hoping to not hurt any feelings on this. What do you think I mean by less top-down training? What do you think I mean by that? Way in the back in the corner.
More of a constructive approach and less destructive and more user-driven.
Ooh, okay. In fact, since you're way in the back, I'm going to give you a free float pen just for that question. Sorry about the video on this one.
Thank you.
Let me know if that works, too. It's the talk between formal training and informal training. Top down. Any other thoughts that come when I use that phrase?
Well, one of the challenges we all face is that our business partners tell us our learners need this much information.
Okay.
All the background, all this stuff, and our learners say they don't need all that.
All right. So did everyone hear that? So our business partners say, our sales force, our technicians, whoever the target audience is, they need all this information. They need it. And you, training a department, L&D, T&D, whatever you're called, you need to impart it to them. That's why you're here. You're the professionals. You're the instructional designer. So I wanted to get out to them the most effective way possible. That's because you're the professionals. And we wanted to get out to them soon. And we don't have much money in the budget. Right? It all sounds familiar. Top down. So we have valuable information for you, audience, learners, target audience, and we want to impart it to you because we care for you. But That is changing. This top-down, we got a bunch of information. Come and learn it. Come to wherever you are. We'll share it. You'll bring it back to your job. Remember our phrase? Mobile learning is just...
Just for me, it's just enough.
You got them all. All right. Very good. Or many of you did. You're now wanting pens. I can tell. Yes. Yeah.
Don't people learn a lot better when they actually solve the problem instead of having people tell them what the answers are?
There is research behind that. Bob Mosher, the 7-20-10, looked that up of the way people learn. And 10% of people learn by formal training. That leaves 90% of people that learn in ways that we don't do right now. So look up 7-20-10, Bob Mosher, get a feel for that. Again, there's not total agreement of where that research came from, but it's a great discussion starter. But collaboration is a great example of how people learn. So for instance, companies that have tried, and they typically call it their own YouTube site, but they have sharing of videos by, say, stores, particular stores, or plant locations, whatever the case might be, in the context of the situation. They tell the target audience, make your own video on a best practice, upload it here, you can share it with all of your peers. And your peers then can rate it, comment on it, and so everybody has ownership in the experience throughout. It has so many great consequences or results of that. So for instance, going back to social media, how it could be a window to what we need to learn, what's not being learned. Something like that obviously is going to tell us a lot, because if there's a particular set of videos that are getting lots of comments, that are getting lots of high ratings, that are getting lots of hits because we have great analytics built into the site, that's telling us a boatload of knowledge. It's also telling us that we've got a lot of good trainers out there. In fact, I've heard instances of people that are working at a store location or something, they find out are awesome trainers, and they grab those people and bring them up, and they're doing instructor-led instead of being an assistant manager of a store, because they found a great trainer to come out of all of it. So less top-down, less comprehensive, bulky modules. So let me try to say this the most delicate way. We've got an expo here that have quite a few vendors of rapid development tools that now have a mobile component. Look at this. Right? How many of you use Lectora? A lot. Yeah. What does Lectora Mobile look like? Is there a rep from Lectora in here? I'm not bashing this at all, by the way, just as a precursor. It looks like Lectora eLearning. In fact, it looks exactly like it. And the same would be true at this point, whether it's Articulate or Captivate, whatever it might be. The solution is, let's get our e-learning on tablets. I'm not saying that's a bad thing by any means. But how well does that match up against our just checklist? Just enough?
Probably overkill.
It's more just too much, right? Just for me?
Not really.
That's just for everybody who's hooked into it. Just in time? Maybe. Maybe. Just needed, if we wanted to add one? Yeah, that could help. If it's some mandatory training, whatever the case might be, and I can take it in Starbucks between sales calls or something, that's a plus. I don't have to wait till I get home later that night and take it because it's due by midnight, even though I found out 2 months ago that I was supposed to take it. Seriously, right? When is your best response to any mandatory training that has a deadline? The 24 hours before the deadline. You know how, I don't have to tell you how well your modules are doing if you have an LMS. That sounded bad. So less comprehensive, bulky modules, less cluttered interfaces, all these buttons and stuff. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And less pizzazz, dare I say, Flash, because we're still mourning Flash, aren't we? We are. It's part of several talks that are here. What do I do with all my Flash and my modules? I mean, let's just all have a moment of silence for Flash. Really? I mean, some people just talk about it in really sad tones and their eyes well up. Why? Because they've invested so much in Flash, so that's understandable. And they have modules that do all this cool stuff, and you ought to see my splash screen on this one e-learning module. It'll make you cry. And so that is not needed for mobile. If I need an answer right away, I don't want to watch your splash screen. I want my information 2 touches away. And don't even think about saying click. All right. 6 Ps. As you're building this whole strategy, you're going to have discussions about platform. And platform is not your operating system. Android is a platform. Ice cream sandwich is an operating system. What platform are you going to use? Or more than one? So that, of course, leads to devices and procurement. Are we buying devices? We've worked with companies that say to us, hey, listen, we've distributed 900 iPads to our sales force, so we'd like to do something with them. And we say, so would we. Policy, whether it's BYOB or enterprise procured devices, you need a policy of how those can be used, what they're used for. If it's BYOD, are there some things you can't do on that device, even though it's your own device? What if you have somebody that does, I don't know, off-track betting or something on their mobile device? Well, who knows? You know, the context will tell you. So policies of how those are used. HR is going to want to have a very strong interest in this. When can you use them? Users might say, hey, if I'm answering email after hours, outside of my shift, can I put that in for overtime? You don't have a policy, you don't have a good answer for that. And HR is going to say, we need a policy before that even happens. All these kinds of questions, they're huge. And so that's another big part of BYOB because of provision. IT is going to want to know, all right, we've got these devices, and we've already spotlighted 27 devices that we have to support, and they're going to have our apps on the device, and they're going to have their own personal apps on the device. How are we going to separate those? How are we going to do that? So it might have to do with an acronym that I'm not going to share because it's one of our acronym alerts. Then publishing, how do we distribute it? Is it going through one of the app stores? Are we going to build our own app store? Are we going to send it through the mobile browser? How are we doing it? You've got to figure that out. You've got to answer those questions. These are important questions. And then the procedures. So we figured out all those 5 Ps. What's the order of how it all plays out? That's your 6 Ps. If you want these in more detail, floatlearning.com blog has a blog post on every one of those in detail. Great stuff on our blog. So who's part of the M team? People like this. Instructional and UI, UX design. What's UI? User interface, UX. What's the difference?
I don't know.
Well, user interface design is what? We do that in e-learning.
One is the design of the actual interface, the other one is designing it to be used by people.
Mm-hmm.
And examining how it's used.
Okay. So the user interface design is the actual design of the interface. I'll give that one. But obviously, thinking in very simple terms, how do we make it intuitive, this interactive? The user experience is their contextual relationship to your application. Now, in e-learning days, that was pretty darn controlled. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to launch a module, I'm going to learn, I'm going to take an assessment, I'm going to report it to the LMS. Now our user, who knows where they're at? They might be on a plant floor, they might be in a Starbucks, they might be driving and taking your course. No, I'm just kidding. Let's see if you're listening. They might be in all sorts of situations, and we have to look at that contextual. So what if you decide to add audio to your course, and then most of your users are in a somewhat loud place? You never thought of that. Or what if they're always outdoors on a mine site, and those 900 iPads we bought, when they're in bright sunlight, it's hard to see what's on the screen. It doesn't matter how awesome your new mobile application is. Nobody can see it. So, user experience. Development skill sets and tools. So that's evaluating what you need to add or maybe new skill sets of your existing people. Do we hire out? Maybe we're already ready. We got somebody who's awesome at HTML, and we've decided we're going to go with HTML5, and so they need a little bit of training, but we're a lot closer than we think. Those kind of questions. Content strategy we talked about. It's great to have a technical information architect person on your team that knows the back end. So when they hear a acronym like API, what's that mean? API.
Application programming interface.
All right. Application programming interface. You get a pen for that. That they know not only what you're talking about, but kind of even how to do it. So an application programming interface, and you're going to hear this with the phrase tin can API a lot. You'll see it in the expo booths and on banners and things like that. What does that mean, tin can API? Well, you've heard about tin can, maybe. Who has heard about tin can so far? All right, it's something. How many of you have heard of SCORM? Lots more hands. All right, think of it like SCORM for the mobile world. But the folks at ADL would smack me for that, but it's a good, just relative way to learn about it. Tin Can builds what's called an LRS, Learner Record Store, that records the activities of the learner. Much more robust, much more detailed than what we're used to with an LMS. What are some things that your LMS records for a learner? Score, yeah, but I mean the actual
Progress. No, score.
class.
Score.
Score. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said SCORM again. Sorry, Derek. Progress. Okay, what was the other one? Classes taken. You know, Joe Smith took this module. Yeah. Submissions. So we got completion. We got competency. Yeah. Yeah. So think of all of that plus lots more. And Tin Can is capable of building this learner record store of those activities. TinCanAPI.com, also now being called Experience API or X API, as I was corrected this morning. They're trying to move away from that Tin Can label, but it's been used so much for the last year, we're still all very much used to calling it that. You need good testing in your app, and then I want to nominate you as the mobile learning champion within your group. That's a person who just decides that I'm going to be the spokesperson for mobile within our company or our organization. I'm going to be the head evangelist. And whenever I can share the power of mobile, I'm going to do that. Be that person. So go back to Mobile Smart, and that's what you have to do and become. I like champions. And there's different types of content we can draw from. Converted content we're very used to, our existing content, and there's maybe some great stuff there. Business processes, can our mobile app connect to our CRM, our supply chain management software? This is where an API comes in handy, because our app has to shake hands with that existing awesome database of information. But how does it do that? So an API might already exist. Maybe it's to something big like Salesforce. Maybe we can get an API for it, or we might have to write our own. Who knows? Do you have that person on your team? Social and user-generated. So we've talked about that, where there might be lots of information to be found in your existing social areas. So communities and wikis, maybe use Yammer. Those places where people collaborate. There might be some great content there. And then the things that are uniquely mobile. And that goes back to our reimagine and thinking expansively. So geolocation is one way. Who can think of another uniquely mobile feature that could be worked into training? What do you think?
Video. Video.
Okay. So, voice response, I like it, which is getting better, right? We learned last week that Siri's getting lots better. Now has a male and female voice. For those of you who are troubled with that. But getting better at what it's doing. So video, or the camera. What if it is a collaborative site and I post something about the way to fix things, or I say look for, in my safety inspection, look for dents in the radiator, and I come out that morning and there's a dent in the radiator. I'm going to take a picture and upload it, because then my other people doing safety inspections, they not only know to look for dents, they know what one looks like, or a leaky hose, or whatever. Photographs, powerful. So, things that are uniquely mobile. MDM, MAM, acronym alert.
Master data management.
Nope. Sorry. Mobile device management and
Mobile app management.
what? Yes, very good. How many pens do I have left? Oh my gosh. All right, we talked about how IT is just wondering how are we going to keep, I love the excitement. I shouldn't do this for safety reasons, so poke an eye out. How do we keep track of all this stuff? Who has what device? What applications do they have on that device? What if they lose that device? Can I do something about it? We're going to talk about that in just a short time. All right, this is a fun part. I'm actually going to go behind. Now design. Who in here is the actual designer? Okay? No matter what platform you're going to, if you go online, there are user interface guidelines out the wazoo for you to learn and know. And they're awesome. They're great reading about how to make mobile intuitive. So here we have BlackBerry. Here you have Apples. Here you have Android. And there is a Windows one, which I went to, but I just ran out of room on the slide. Sorry. And it didn't have any pictures, and I wanted some color, something. Give me something. So as you go into each one of these areas, you learn how to build mobile apps effectively, correctly. 4 minutes to go. Oh, my God. And in fact, if you're going iOS and you need to submit your app to be approved, if you're outside the guidelines, just be prepared for that rejection email. So if your back button is not in the upper left, or your, I shouldn't call it the back button, the button that goes to the previous place you were, you're going to get rejected if you've got it in the lower right. So let's take a look. This will look kind of familiar to one of you. Here's a straightforward e-learning course. Okay? Warning labels. Looks pretty familiar. We've got the up top nav and got some icons, and if I click on one, it shows up and tells me what that is. What if we said, we want to put this on mobile? All right, so if we just did a straight conversion, it would look like this. And this would be an awful user experience. Why?
Tiny print, where you're trying to get.
Yeah, you're getting all of them. Tiny print. We got a scroll bar happening here. How am I going to even touch those nav buttons? It's not going to work. So what can I do? I start working harder to build a new user interface that's more appropriate for mobile. And so we got a little closer here on the left. We still got a scroll going left to right, but we don't need that because we can swipe. So here's a great one. The icons go along the bottom, and I can just swipe to see others, and I just touch one, and it tells me what it is. If I just need a regular list, I can touch up in the upper right and have a list pop down of just maybe categories of the labels or whatever the case. But this looks a lot different than our original e-learning course, right? And there is no button in e-learning development software that says, redesign this for mobile. Click Save As, that I know about. So here's an example of bad mobile UI. Want to share any of the reasons why this is bad? Chrome.
Look at all the wasted space.
Lots of wasted space. Why do I have a start button? What does this mean? These 4 dots.
Why do you have the screen lowered?
Right, if I just swipe, there's more screens.
You've got actions on the bottom, but only one of them's available. And then you got a home screen.
Well, you can't see them on here good. The icons on here are awful. In fact, the help section has what's a gear on top of it, and a gear typically means settings. There's a start button. Get rid of the start button. Yeah, one more.
Icon for the expectations is like,
It's weird.
it's like a location icon.
Yeah, exactly. So she says click the start button, and it's an avatar in the first place. Ugh. I'm just getting queasy looking at it. All right, we're just about out of time, which I apologize. I can't speak enough about the power of a prototype and how that can be very effective. Prototypes, you can get very specific in what you're doing. You can keep your arms around it. It's less risky, smaller budget, smaller schedule. But let's take a look at something here. Prototypes can just be paper. You could outline this on paper, take pictures of it, and have those pictures in your camera roll. And that's what you use to talk about how's this going to work? How's the user experience going to go? But there's some cool stuff at uistencils.com where what's that? Where you can buy this stencil for the different platforms. And then they have these pads of paper. And so you can draw the buttons in very proportionately to the kind of prototype you're doing. So that's an awesome product, uistencils.com. If you want to take it one further, go to one of these sites, especially envisionapp.com. So what we did was we designed an interface of this fictional corporation, megacorp, on JPEGs. You upload them to InVision, and then you can add interactivity to the different screens. So it's just jumping from JPEG to JPEG. But then you can send the link to any device, because it's really a mobile web browser solution. and it looks like a mobile app.